Today we are doing Robert Browning. Robert Browning, one of the greatest Victorian poets. His period was from 1812 to 1889. Robert Browning was born at Camberwell, Camberwell, Camberwell on 7th May 1812. When and where was Robert Browning born? Robert Browning was born at Camberwell on 7th May 1812. He was educated semi-privately. That means he was mostly educated at home. He was born into a well-to-do family. He was born into a rich family. So most of his education was conducted at home. That is, he was educated semi-privately. P.B. Shelley influenced him in his younger days. In his younger years, P.B. Shelley had a great influence on him. P.B. Shelley, Percy Bysshe Shelley had a great impact on him. Browning was fascinated by Shelley's love for liberty and his revolt against convention and oppression. Robert Browning was greatly fascinated, greatly attracted by P.B. Shelley's love for liberty, love for freedom, and his revolt, his rebellion, Shelley's rebellion against convention, the old practices, and oppression, the oppression of the rich classes, oppression. As we can see in some of the revolutionary poems of P.B. Shelley, the very same theme. The poems like Song to the Men of England and Ode to the West Wind contain these themes. And Robert Browning was greatly influenced by Shelley's love for liberty and his revolt against convention and oppression. Then Lord Byron, the romantic poet Lord Byron. Byron also influenced him. Byron also influenced Robert Browning. After a brief course at University College London, Browning for a short period traveled to Russia. For a brief period, he traveled to Russia in 1833. In the year 1833, Browning had a short travel to Russia. Later, he returned to England after some time, after a brief period, after a very short span of time. He returned to England and lived in London, lived at the capital of England, London. In 1834, he paid his first visit to Italy. Italy, a country which was to him a fitful land of home. His favorite place was Italy, and he seemed to have said, if you dissect my heart, you can see Italy written there. Such was his fascination, great fascination for Italy, the neighboring country, which had a warmer climate than that of England. So in which year he paid his first visit to Italy? In 1834. In 1834, he paid his first visit to Italy, a country which was to him a fitful land, fitful kind of home, fitful land or a very suitable kind of home. In 1845, he visited Elizabeth Barrett, a poetess, a contemporary poetess, Elizabeth Barrett. The poetess whose works had strongly attracted him. Elizabeth Barrett's works had greatly attracted Robert Browning, and he paid a visit to her in the year 1845. There was a mutual liking ensued, a mutual liking followed, and then they had a private correspondence. Then after a secret private marriage, they had a secretly married because Elizabeth's parents Elizabeth Barrett's parents were rich. They were aristocratic members. So they did not allow this marriage. So they had a secret private marriage. And after the marriage, they eloped to their favorite country, Browning's favorite country, Italy. So that was the acquaintance turning into love. Then what is his wife's name? Elizabeth Barrett, a poetess, a Victorian poetess, we can say. So they eloped to Italy and they settled at a beautiful town named Venice, a magnificent place to live in, with full of lakes and the boat called the gondola. Very beautiful place, nice place, Venice. They settled there. Venice was the favorite place of Robert Browning. The remainder of Browning's life was full of journeys between England and France and Italy, and also with much poetical activity. So after this marriage, Browning's life was full of journeys, travelings between England and France and Italy, and also with much political activity during this period. Later, his wife Elizabeth Barrett died at Florence in the year 1861, leaving one son. They had only one son. The son's name was also Robert Browning. Perhaps it is Robert Penn Browning. Robert Penn Browning, his son's name. So his wife died in which year? In 1861. At which place? Venice itself, leaving one son, Robert Penn Browning. Later, Browning returned to England. Though in 1878 he went back once more to Italy. In the year 1878, he returned to Italy once more. In which year he returned? He returned to Italy once more in the year 1878. In 1882, Oxford conferred upon the degree of DCL. The honorary degree of DCL was conferred on the great poet Robert Browning in the year 1882. Then he died in Italy at Florence. Robert Browning died in Italy at Florence, and he actually wanted to be buried there, but he was taken to England and he was buried at Westminster Abbey in London. He was buried at the church Westminster Abbey in London. Where did he died while he was in Italy at Florence, but he was cremated. He was buried in Westminster Abbey in London. So this is the brief biographical sketch of Robert Browning. Now let us see his poems and plays. He also wrote plays, even though they were not successful. His poems and plays. His first poetic work was Pauline, P-A-U-L-I-N-E, Pauline, which was published in the year 1833. In which year Pauline was published? It was published in 1833. It is an introspective poem. It is a poem of self-examination, self-analysis, introspective. What a kind of poem it is? It is, of course, an introspective poem. And it had also a subtitle. The poem had a subtitle, A Fragment of a Soul. A Fragment of a Soul. That was a subtitle given to his first poem, Pauline, published in the year 1833. A Fragment of a Soul. J.S. Mill, our philosopher. Which philosopher? Utilitarian philosopher. Our utilitarian philosopher during the Victorian age, he liked the poem very much. John Stuart Mill, the utilitarian philosopher, liked this poem very much. It was almost a mad type of poem. It was a poem full of obscurity, means it was a difficult poem. It was a mad type of poem. Which poem? The very first poem, Pauline, which was published in 1833. Paracelsus. Paracelsus, Paracelsus. Paracelsus, which was published in 1835, was the poem which dealt with the poet's unquenchable thirst. They were the heroes' unquenchable thirst for knowledge, which is beyond the grasp of man. It is a poem which deals with. Paracelsus, which was published in 1835, is a poem which deals with the heroes, unquenchable, insatiable, unquenchable, which cannot be satisfied. That is unquenchable, insatiable, thirst for knowledge, which is beyond the grasp of one man. So this was a feature of Victorian age which is very clearly illustrated in Alfred Lord Tennyson's poem. Ulysses contains this theory, unquenchable thirst for knowledge. So which is beyond the grasp of one man. It deals with the life of a Swiss alchemist. His second poem, Paracelsus, deals with the life of a Swiss alchemist. Then the next work was a play. The third work was a play, Strafford. Strafford, S-T-R-A-F-F-O-R-D, Strafford. The third work was a play, Strafford, which was published in Strafford, S-T-R-A-F-F-O-R-D, Strafford, which was published in 1837. The third work was a play, Strafford, which was published in 1837. It was actually written for the actor William Macready. The play was written, this verse play, it was not a prose play, it was a verse play, verse drama. It was written for the actor William Macready. But it was not a popular success, it was not a successful play. It failed. Then Sordallo, S-O-R-D-L-O, Sordallo, which was published in the year 1840, is a poem which makes an attempt to decide the relationship with art and life. Sordallo is a poem which makes an attempt to decide the relationship between art and life. In Latin, there is a saying, ars longa, vita brevis. That means arts is permanent, whereas life is short. So the relationship between arts and human life is described in the long poem Sordallo, S-O-R-D-L-O, Sordallo, which was published in the year 1840. So its obscure style, it was full of obscurity, means ununderstandable nature. It was of course a difficult poem. Its obscure style led to the hostile reception, unfriendly reception by the reading public. The reading public was not ready to accept it fully because of the obscurity or difficulty to understand the poem. The poem was very difficult to understand. So, its obscure style led to the hostile reception by the reading public. Next is a collection of poems, Bells and Pomegranates. Bells and Pomegranates. Bells and Pomegranates, it refers to the Christian priest's uniform, bells and pomegranates. Bells and Pomegranates is published in the year 1840. It was published in the year 1846. It was a collection of poems, Bells and Pomegranates. He also wrote 6 verse plays. After this, he also wrote 6 verse plays which were in poems. That means poetical drama or verse dramas. He wrote 6 verse plays. Pippa Passes, P-I-P-P-A-P-A-S-S-E-S, Pippa Passes, which was published in the year 1841. So the verse play is about a woman walking as a silk winder. Silk winder means one who is winding silk from the cocoons. The cocoons are put in hot water and the silk is extracted out of it. The silk is extracted out of it. That is a silk winder. It is about a woman working as a silk winder. The concluding lines of the verse play, which we play Pippa passes, the concluding lines or the ending lines of the verse play are very much famous, very much significant. In that play, the concluding lines are, God is in heaven, all is well with the world. God is in heaven, all is well with the world. These are the concluding lines of the verse drama, verse play, which is in Pippa passes. Pippa passes. God is in heaven, all is well with the world. This is the optimistic outlook of the poet. One of the characters, features of this poet is optimism, sheer optimism, complete optimism. He was positive in his outlook and he was optimistic in the ways of God. That is what is exemplified by the last lines or the concluding lines of the verse play. Pippa passes, God is in heaven, all is well with the world. Then another play, King Victor and King Charles, which was published in 1842. Then comes a blot on the escutcheon, published in 1848. Column's birthday, it was published in 1844. These are some of the important plays he wrote. Then Luria and a Soul's Tragedy, which was published in 1846. All these plays lack in dramatic quality, which were the important plays he wrote. The number one is Pippa Passes and King Victor and King Charles. The Rayathan of the Druses, published not in 1848 as I told you earlier. It was published in 1843. A blot on the Septuagint, published in the year 1843 itself. Then Column's birthday in 1844, and Luria and a Soul's Tragedy in 1846. All these plays were failures because these plays lack in dramatic quality. Then dramatic lyrics, a collection of poems, dramatic lyrics, published in the year 1846, containing or covering a period of 10 years. The writing of the poems in dramatic lyrics covered a period of 10 years from 1836 to 1846. Dramatic lyrics, which was published in 1846, covering a period of 10 years from 1836 to 1844, exhibits every side of Browning's genius. This collection of poems exhibits or shows every side of Browning's genius. Tenderness, the quality of tenderness is shown in Evil in Hope. The poem Evil in Hope contains tenderness and passion. The quality of passion can be seen in a gondola. Gondola is the name of the Italian boat, a Venetian boat. Passion, the quality of passion can be visible in a gondola. Subtlety in Porphyria's lover. Subtlety, the greatness of love is visible in Porphyria's lover. I think you might have already studied it. Porphyria's lover. You know, the speaker strangles his beautiful lady in order to preserve the moment of love. The hero kills his sweetheart in order to preserve the beautiful moment of love. Very strange indeed. But there is a subtlety of love. The real subtlety of love is visible there. In which poem? Porphyria's lover. The speaker strangles his beautiful lady love, in order to preserve the beautiful moment of love. Then, intellectual brilliance, the quality of intellectual brilliance is visible in his dramatic monologue, My Last Duchess. Last Duchess, dealing with a recently widowed Duke of Ferrara. A recently widowed Duke of Ferrara. Duke of Ferrara was suspicious about his wife's love, and he gave orders to some men, and finally she is dead. So it is a, if we want to understand what a real dramatic monologue is, we have to study this poem, this lyric, this dramatic monologue, My Last Duchess. It contains all the qualities of a dramatic monologue. This piece is a perfect one regarding dramatic monologue. Which poem? My Last Duchess. The lyric, My Last Duchess, in which the hero is a recently widowed Duke of Ferrara. He is jealous of his wife, and finally she gets killed. Actually, it is Duke of Ferrara who orders to kill her because of his jealous nature or suspicion. And the quality of kindliness is visible in his poem, in his dramatic monologue, Warning, and genial extravaganza in the Pied Piper of Hamelin, a story which is very favorite to children, the Pied Piper of Hamelin. What quality is visible there? Genial extravaganza. Genial means very smooth, extravaganza is very clearly seen. It is a story of revenge by the Pied Piper, who is cheated by the people, and he finally teaches them a lesson. Pied Piper of Hamelin. How does he teach the people who cheated him? He shuts all the children of the village in a mountain, and thus he teaches the people a lesson. Then, dramatic romances and lyrics, a collection of poems. Dramatic romances and lyrics, which was published in the year 1845, shows the flawless excellence of excellence. It shows the flawless or faultless or clear excellence, greatness. Which volume? The volume Dramatic Romances and Lyrics, which was published in the year 1845, shows the flawless excellence Browning achieved in writing dramatic monologues. By the way, what is a dramatic monologue? Dramatic monologue is a lyric. It is a lyric. Dramatic means having dramatic moments. Mono means single. Log means speech. Dramatic monologue means a single man speaking or a single person speaking. Dramatic monologue. It is a lyric in which there is only one speaker. That is one of the great qualities of dramatic monologue. Then there should be a listener. The listener will be silent. It will be a silent listener. Silent listener. And even though there is only one character, there is only one speaker, the presence of others is felt throughout the poem. That is another characteristic of dramatic monologue. Dramatic monologue. There should be a silent listener to listen to the innermost thoughts and feelings coming from the speaker. That is what is dramatic monologue. It is Robert Browning who had perfected this dramatic monologue. Robert Browning. So, Dramatic Romances and Lyrics, which was published in 1845, shows the flawless excellence Browning achieved in writing dramatic monologues. Men and Women, published in 1855. Men and Women. Of course, it is one of his finest works. Browning's finest works, Men and Women, published in 1855, consists entirely of dramatic monologues. It consists only dramatic monologues. Which collection of poems, which volume? Men and Women, published in which year? 1855. It consists entirely of dramatic monologues. The memorable monologues which appeared in the volume are Fra Lippo Lippi. Fra, the Italian word fra means brother or monk. Monk. Fra Lippo Lippi. One of the memorable dramatic monologues which appeared in Men and Women published in 1855 is Fra Lippo Lippi. It is about a 15th century Florentine painter. It is about the painter who belonged to Florence in Italy. And a monk. Fra means monk or brother. Fra Lippo Lippi. Then comes Andrea del Sarto. Andrea del Sarto. It is about a Renaissance. It is about a Renaissance painter in Florence, talking to his nagging wife. See, Andrea del Sarto. Andrea is a painter. He is talking to his nagging, disobedient wife Lucretia. The heroine's name is Lucretia, who does not heed to his advice or anything at all. Who is having her own way, and the most important disqualification of her nature is that he is pleased by anything and everything. He becomes happy by anybody's words, and he treats everyone alike. Lucretia treats her husband and the servant alike. That is the problem. That is the problem of the jealous and painful husband Andrea. Andrea, the painter. He is speaking to his nagging wife. It is one of the most important dramatic monologues written by Robert Browning, Andrea del Sarto. Then Cleone, another dramatic monologue, Cleone. Then One Word More written to his beloved Elizabeth Barrett. One word more written for his beloved. Then Bishop Blogram's Apology. BLOUGRAM apostrophe Bishop Blogram's Apology, etc. Then Dramatis Personae, another collection of poems, Dramatis Personae, which was published in the year 1864. Is again a collection of dramatic monologues. It is also a collection of dramatic monologues. What is the title of the book? Dramatis Personae. Famous among the famous dramatic monologues in the collection are Caliban upon Setebos. Caliban, the character which we can see in Shakespeare's Tempest, Caliban. And Setebos is his god. Caliban upon Setebos. Caliban and Setebos is god. That is a theme of Caliban upon Setebos. Caliban's outlook to the world and his god. Caliban upon Setebos. A Death on the Desert. Rabbi Ben Ezra. Rabbi means Jewish priest. It's a Jewish word. Rabbi means a Jewish priest. Rabbi Ben Ezra. It is a Jewish mathematician and scholar. The theme of Rabbi Ben Ezra is old age. Old age is the theme of the poem Rabbi Ben Ezra. Rabbi Ben Ezra is a Jewish mathematician and scholar. And Abt Vogler. Another monologue is Abt, A-B-T. Abt Vogler, V-O-G-L-E-R. Abt is a short form of abbot. Abbot, priest. Abbot Vogler. Abbot, he was not only a priest but also a musician. He invented his own musical instruments. He is an 18th century music composer. He was an 18th century music composer. Abbot Vogler. Another dramatic monologue by Robert Browning. Browning's last volume, Aslando, which is his last volume, which is his last work, Aslando. It was published in December 1889. Do you remember the year 1889? The year in which he died. When did he die? Robert Browning died on December 12th, 1889. December 12th, 1889. And that year itself his last volume, the last collection of poems, Hustle. Okay. Then let us discuss something about Browning's themes. Browning's themes divide themselves broadly into three groups. We can classify Browning's themes into three groups: philosophical or religious. First one is philosophical or religious. Second group, love and lighter themes. Third one is lighter themes. The theme we can see in Pied Piper of Hamelin, etc. Lighter theme it is. It is, we can see lighter theme. So Browning's themes can be classified or divided broadly into three groups. Which are they? Philosophical or religious, love or lighter themes. His philosophical poems bear his central beliefs. When we examine Browning's philosophical poems, we can see his central beliefs. That, what is his central belief? That life must be a striving beyond our reach. Human life should always be a striving or hard work beyond our reach. We should always try hard, work hard in order to achieve something which lies beyond the reach of ordinary man. Then he was very optimistic. Optimism was his hallmark. Because of his staunch belief in God, he remained optimistic. He was very optimistic in his outlook. Then his love poems are perhaps the greatest achievement. We can see that his love poems are really the greatest achievement. So because they have a calm, his love poems have a calm authenticity of tone. His love poems, like Porphyria's Lover and other poems, have an authority, calm authority of tone, a genuineness of tone. That is it. Like Tennyson, we can see a resemblance between Tennyson and Browning. Like Tennyson, Browning devoted his long life entirely to literature. Tennyson, we found in our last class, Tennyson devoted his entire life to literature. Similarly, Robert Browning also devoted his entire life to literature. Then in contrast to the Tennyson, in opposite to Tennyson, unlike Tennyson, in contrast with Tennyson, Browning was bold. Unlike Tennyson, Browning was very bold, rugged, rough and tough, and unconventional. He was quite unconventional. He did not follow the old practices and customs. He was quite unconventional in his approach. He was bold, rugged, and unconventional in matter and style. The main features of his poetry, the main characteristics or the main features of his poetry are psychological insight. Which are the main features of his poetry? Number one, psychological insight. Psychological insight. Then analytical subtlety. Analytical subtlety and power of dramatic interpretation. These are the three features which we can see, which are discernible in his poetry. Which are they? Psychological insight, analytical subtlety, and power of dramatic interpretation, as we can see in his dramatic monologues. His strong faith in God gave a robust optimism to his poetry. He always had a very strong faith in God. He was a true Christian in that sense. He had a very strong faith in God, which gave him very robust. Robust means healthy optimism to his poetry. So this much about Robert Browning. And in our next class we can discuss Matthew Arnold and the pre